Your Excellency, I must at the outset point out that you are perhaps the first foreign minister of a foreign country to come here in the Constitution Club of India and to deliver a special address. The Constitution Club of India is a very historic place. It was in 1947 that the members of newly independent India's Constituent Assembly had decided to form and to come together and had decided to form a club where they would periodically meet, discuss and brainstorm amongst themselves the future of India, her roadmap and the direction that she would take. It was in 1965 that this building was inaugurated by our philosopher president, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. And therefore, when we discussed with Ambassador and we were deciding where to host you, we thought that this would be a very historic place, symbolic to have you here. So I just wanted to make this observation at the outset by welcoming you. We have here a very interesting gathering. We got very short notice and therefore we could not make it bigger and at a convenient time of our choosing. But we have some very senior diplomats here. One of our best friends, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, Ambassador Suresh Goel, and there are others who have been already introduced to you. We have young spokesperson of the party. We have Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, who's been around with us with his insight and deep efforts always. I want to remind everyone in this house, in this room, that it was not very long ago, in October 2019, at the Arctic EU Forum, that you shared stage with our Minister of External Affairs, Mr. V. Muralidharan. And you had said there that it is vital that peace and security in the region be preserved. And although Latvia is not an Arctic country, the Arctic region is important to us since we are bordering two Arctic countries. So I wanted to start with reminding you what you said not very long ago. And we have one of the senior most Arctic specialists also here in India, Dr. Uttam Sinha. And for us, emotionally, Arctic is very symbolic because one of our greatest patriots, Lokmanya Tilak, had written his fascinating book, The Arctic Home of the Vedas. In February 2019, the Center for Indian Studies and Culture in Latvia was launched. And in 2016, September, Ravi Shankar Prasad, our minister, visited Latvia. And that was part of the effort where it was Prime Minister Modi's vision that we should reach out to all those countries that we have not reached out since we were independent. And Latvia came, therefore, in a priority there. We have all gathered here today to understand the various dimensions of India-Latvia relationship. There are young scholars who have gathered here because it is very important that we take our relationship forward into the next generations and not only generation. And every generation can innovate, restate and reinvent our relationship. I'm not getting into the other dimensions, skill education, connectivity, the India-Latvia Cooperation Forum, the entire gamut of Ayush and Ayurveda. I think India-Latvia relationship offers tremendous opportunity, is already dynamized, and what befalls on our shoulders is to restate it in a new light and connect your vision of the world with Prime Minister Modi's vision of a new India and the 21st century. So I welcome you again, Your Excellency, and we are deeply honored that you have agreed to grace this occasion and to come here amidst us today.
Thank you, Dr. Ganguly, and to set the framework for our introduction, Mr. Minister, I thought I should just take this opportunity to focus on 5 issues. The first is something that a lot of us have forgotten in our own country, and that is that India-Latvia relations actually go back 100 years. When Latvia joined the League of Nations in 1921, India was one of the founder members of the League of Nations. That's the anomaly of anomalies, but we were there, and we supported your membership of the League of Nations in 1921. And one of the areas of our cooperation in the League of Nations, which links with what Dr. Ganguly also mentioned a little while ago, was our collaboration in a committee of the League of Nations called the International Committee for Intellectual Cooperation. As part of this committee in Latvia, the University of Latvia set up a national committee for intellectual cooperation. And from India, Dr. Radhakrishnan, whom Dr. Ganguly mentioned, who was our second president of our republic, he was India's representative in that committee. So there have been connections between India and Latvia, even as far back as during the League of Nations. The second area is on education. Yesterday, Mr. Minister, you launched a very interesting book called The Folklore in Baltic History, written by a professor from one of our universities. And this tells the important story of Baltic folk songs and their impact on independence movements. What I thought would be interesting for us to focus on is the independence movement of Latvia when Latvia emerged from Soviet domination and became independent once again in 1991. Because a lot of us in India at that time were looking at the Baltic states and were looking at the way that the message of independence and non-violence, which had been articulated in India during our independence movement and freedom struggle by Mahatma Gandhi, resonated in the Baltic states. And this was something that we followed, and I think that provides us with a very important dimension to carry forward our political dialogue in the near future. Mention has been made of the new areas of cooperation between India and Latvia, among which is education. You yourself have mentioned about a large number of almost 2,000 Indian students who are now in Latvia. There is in India a beginning of an interest in institutionalizing educational exchanges. And I think that apart from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, which has a department for Baltic studies, we also have a university in Hardwar, the Dev Sanskriti University, which is actually bringing out an online journal of Indo-Baltic culture and studies. So I think this is the time to institutionalize this cooperation and tap into private sector universities in India, which are helping. They are recognized by the University Grants Commission, and they're helping in broadening the traditional concepts that we have inherited from our past, but we are now bringing it in tune with the new India that we are talking about. The third area is on digital empowerment. And in India, you are aware, Mr. Minister, of our very ambitious program which our Prime Minister has launched called Digital India. It has 9 pillars. But the main focus of that program, which we have repeatedly said in Parliament, is that it is people-centric. It is focused on the individual. And because of the way in which Latvia has used digital technologies to both empower individuals as well as to accelerate development, I think that this gives us a chance and an interface where we can actually collaborate very closely in the digital world as it emerges in the 21st century. The fourth area is an area which is something that is new for a lot of Indians, but it began in March 2015, and that was the assertion by our Prime Minister of India's maritime identity. Until 2015, we looked at ourselves through the land, but from 2015 March, we have looked at ourselves also as part of the maritime domain and focused on the Indian Ocean, for which we have a policy articulated by him called Security and Growth for All in the Region, or SAGAR. Now, under SAGAR, there are two areas of cooperation where India welcomes external participation with our friends. One is in securing the sea lanes of communication, especially in the Indian Ocean, and the other is in developing the marine or blue economy. So these are two areas where I think India and Latvia can look at cooperation. I know in Riga we have set up, or we are planning to set up, a warehousing facility. And perhaps one of the outcomes of this cooperation could actually be the participation of your country in the implementation of the international North-South transport corridor which links the European Union with India. So this is something that is, I thought, worth looking at. And finally, Mr. Minister, and that's something that is almost like an obsession with me, I think that because India and Latvia are also very involved and supportive of multilateralism, and especially of the United Nations, there is an issue on which I think we need to probably collaborate much more closely together. India will become a non-permanent member of the Security Council from next January. Latvia is going to become a non-permanent member of the Security Council in 2026, with the grace of God. But both of us, and our minister has articulated it very well, both of us are committed to what we call reformed multilateralism. And in this context, I think that we need to actually put ourselves together to consider how to make multilateralism more effective, more equitable, more transparent. And I think, and I would mention to this, that would include the question of the veto of the permanent members. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Request Ambassador Attis to.
It seems on, yes. Good morning, everybody, Mr. Minister, Excellencies, dear friends. This is my honor to introduce our guest speaker, and I would start by saying that we are pleased to welcome Mr. Minister on his third visit in India and on his first visit since the embassy has been opened in Anna-Niketan, and this is the second home for all of us, and thank you much for your friendship and putting this event together. The Minister holds bachelor's degree from University of Latvia in History and Philosophy, and 2 master's degrees, one from University of Latvia in Political Science, and from United States National Defense University, master's degree in National Resource Strategy. Minister started his long career as a journalist, working at the Latvian State Radio, and already at that time reporting on the foreign policy and international affairs. He joined the Defense Ministry in 1995, and Latvia is a living example that from 1995 to 2011 you do from the senior desk officer to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, global business officer. Minister was a key person for our joining to the NATO. Minister was the head of the Secretariat for the 2006 Riga NATO summit that was for the first time held on the other side of the former former wall, and if I may say so. And Minister was the head of the President's office, and as of October 2011, Minister is in numerous governments has been already foreign minister, and at the moment is the second longest serving minister in the European Union Club. So I'm very happy and pleased to, for this arrangement.
I think the best description of His Excellency would be that he is a leading European statesman. That sums it up.
Well, I hope it works. You hear me? Yes. Yeah? Very good. Well, first of all, thank you very much for this very warm welcome and very nice speeches that you made, and it's a great honor to be in this foundation. As I just learned that I'm the first foreign minister, and I'm very humbled by this also honor, and I'm very thankful for all of you that have come here this morning to share some views. The title of this meeting or this discussion is very broad. India-Latvia relations in a changing world could be a great subject for a couple of hours of discussing. Let me just outline a couple of areas that I believe are increasingly important for both of our countries. Ambassador, you already covered brilliantly a couple of points I just wanted to make. And let me start from points that you actually used as the ending. Latvia and India in multilateral world, our cooperation with international organizations, namely the United Nations. Actually, if we speak about the changing world and very complex and very challenging world, I do believe that both of our nations share the same vision, that we want to see international order that is based on international law. We want to see multilateral efforts to tackle many challenges, from conflicts, fight against terrorism, and ending with the climate change. To that end, we are also sharing the same determination that we need to have profound reform of the United Nations, particularly the Security Council. I think that, as you said, India will become UN Security Council member. We do hope to get this honor for the 2026-2027 period, but we also believe that one of, let's say, guiding principles is that United Nations have been created at the end of the Second World War. Of course, United Nations reflect the world as it was then. The world has changed enormously, and I think that both of our nations share the vision of the need for the Security Council for the United Nations to reflect the 21st century reality. That's why we very much support the idea of increased presence for permanent member seats, including nations in Asia, including nations in Europe, including nations also in Latin America. And we also believe that those permanent members need to be also, let's say, supplemented by increase of non-permanent member states. Also, we live in very challenging environment. We in Europe have experienced in the almost last 6 years also attempts to challenge European order, especially when it comes to what we consider illegal annexation of Crimea by the Russian Federation, the ongoing war in the east part of Ukraine, and we believe that it's not only the European challenge, but it's actually a global challenge. We also look at more assertive China in geopolitical context, and we believe that the only way how we can tackle the modern challenges is by working together. That's where we have this grand geopolitical standing where, from my discussions with my colleagues, foreign ministers of India, from our discussions when Vice President of India visited Latvia last year, and when the President, the Prime Minister, the leadership of Latvia, we have come to the conclusion that we share the same understanding. The second element I want to outline before I jump immediately to India-Latvia relations and how we can work together is EU-India relations. Latvia is member of EU, NATO and OECD, three very important organizations that actually we wanted to join. When we regained our independence, we joined, and now we try to contribute as much as we can also to the agenda setting of those organizations. When it comes to EU-India relations, and that's something that I'm going to talk also later with my counterpart here when I'm going to meet him, we do believe that in order to promote bilateral ties between Latvia and promote better cooperation and trade relations, what we need to do, we need to restart free trade agreement talks between India and the European Union. We need to look at investment protection arrangements, because we believe that even if it may take some time, some challenges, I do believe that it would be in the best interests of our both countries and in a wider sense EU and India. Also, as you may know, we are in about 2 weeks' time in the process of one of the EU member states, the United Kingdom, departing EU. It is very sad to see one of our most trusted partners and allies to depart European Union. When the referendum happened in June 2016, I immediately commented that it would be great loss for Latvia, because we have been like-minded nations with the United Kingdom. It would be great loss for the European Union, but it is also, I believe, great loss for UK to leave EU. However, we respect the will of the people. Those who have followed the 3.5 years of the very challenging internal struggle within the United Kingdom, and also endless talks between EU and UK, know that it has not been an easy exercise. However, we are not out of the woods yet, because when Brexit happens on 31st of January, we have a time, the transition period, that needs to be used also to forge new relationship between EU and the United Kingdom in all fields: political, trade relations, and also security. While I'm rather skeptical about the possibility of concluding the new agreement, the new trade agreement between the EU and UK in about 11 months, I still think that as the EU we need to do our best to forge very strong, very close relationship between UK and the EU. On trade, I think that this is one area where Latvia wants to see closer relationship between UK and the EU, as close as possible. We also believe that when it comes to security and foreign relations, we need to have the format where we can continue very close coordination. Why I'm talking so much about Brexit and the EU? Because it still has a lot of uncertainties. I know that many Indian companies have been attracted to UK. UK leaving EU means that actually those companies that want to do continuously business with EU, but that have conducted this business from UK, will have to rethink the geographical location within EU. And then, of course, I think that this could be one of areas where we would be happy to see more Indian companies to come to Latvia and to conduct business from Latvia within EU. Because the statistics and the trade data shows that EU is one of the largest trading partners of India. With UK leaving, EU still is going to be the largest partner. And I think that this period, 2 years or so, will have a lot of challenges for all of us, for UK, for EU, and also for what we sometimes refer to third countries, our partners and friends outside of EU, for them to look for the new business models with both, with UK that has departed and also with the remaining EU. Despite all the doomsday scenario, we have seen that actually after Brexit referendum, the internal cohesion of EU is much, let's say, stronger. The trust of the people in EU, in each and every member state, has actually raised for unprecedented levels. And I think that this is where I believe we should look at the ways how we can also promote India-Latvia ties, India-EU ties. Now, the third element that I wanted to mention, and that is what brings me also for the third time to India. The first time was in 2012 when I had bilateral visit, and I had an honor to sign the agreement between Republic of Latvia and Republic of India on avoidance of double taxation, to talk a lot about the need to promote bilateral economic relations, and we were probably the last EU member state that still didn't have the embassy here, which I hope I was able to correct, and we opened embassy 2 years after that visit. I see that all political, economic ties and also cooperation is increasing, and that is where I also take some pride. I do hope also that India will reciprocate and will open the embassy in Riga as the regional embassy. Riga is the regional air hub. We have airport, we have the largest number of Indian students, so I think that this is something that I'm going to talk with the foreign minister. That is where we are getting a bit annoying to our Indian friends, reminding that embassy should be also opened in the region, and we believe that Riga and Latvia is the best place to do it, as I said, from geographical point of view, from connectivity point of view, and also taking into account the number of Indian diaspora and Indian students growing. The second, indeed, Latvia is one of the leading European nations when it comes to digital and information technologies. The ICT sector is growing very fast in Latvia. It's about 20% growth. We have now about a little bit less than 800 million euros of exports of ICT. And I think that taking into account what you just mentioned, the Prime Minister Modi's call for modernization of the country and digital India, that is where I believe there is a potential of cooperation. We have just successfully started implementation of 5G. Our companies like Mikrotik is very successful in providing 5G routers. They have been already working here in India, and I think that there is the room for expansion. Well, 5G is actually not only about ICT anymore and economy, but it has a bit political flavor, as you may imagine, especially taking your neighbor into account and some companies there. I think that this is where we can provide some very good also alternatives, and we would be very happy to work with your companies, with your ICT sector here. We also have been able to be one of the leading nations when it comes to the big data, when it comes to e-governance, government or e-government technologies. When I was visiting Vietnam last year, we were also a lot discussing about the ID technologies, about the possibilities of providing our expertise and also software and hardware for providing passports, identification cards, and also working on solutions for governments almost in each and every area of interest. Another issue that I just want to mention is artificial intelligence and startups. We try to support our startups that are working on artificial intelligence solutions. That is something that is brand new for almost everyone in the world, and that's where I would believe that combining our knowledge and also looking for talents. We have many of Indian bright people working for companies in Latvia. I believe also that it may be expanded also here, and that could be mutually beneficial endeavor. That's also an issue that I'm going to discuss with my Indian friends during not only dialogues and conferences, but also on the meetings that I'm going to have as the side meetings of this conference. And I also want to say that we have been able to also work with many partners in the United States, in Europe, also when it comes to the machine translation technologies. We have companies like Tilde, like Mobily, like LNT. Actually, one of our leading providers of mobile communication services, LNT, has been visiting India in November. I think that they are now assessing their findings, and I think that as they want to go more international, also India can be a great destination for those businesses. So plenty of ideas, plenty of work already ongoing, but I think that if there is an interest to use some of points I've just mentioned, 5G, e-governance tools, also financial services, software, and also if we could find ways how to implement also Prime Minister's Modi vision, how actually expand bilateral cooperation and that of EU of India, that would be something that I would very much see as the great advantage. Another, the third area, and Ambassador, sorry, I have to repeat you again, is education. Well, we are a small country, and India is one of the biggest nations on the earth. So for us, 2,000 students and Indian diaspora in Latvia is big news. For you, it's a small drop looking at all the students studying abroad. However, I think that they are also giving great contribution to our universities and their environment. Exchange of culture and education has been very important, and also our universities are very interested in continuing that kind of cooperation, and I think that engineering, medicine, ICT sector are those where we can actually cooperate further. I'm not even speaking about culture. I don't remember who was making a joke before we came into this discussion on round table and into this room that we are competing a little bit with our friends Lithuanians about some historic ties, Ayurveda, and actually our friends Lithuanians think that they came from here and started to live at the shores of the Baltic Sea. Actually, we are also part of the Baltic group, so we share the same. And just to make another joke about our northern friends and Estonians, who always say that they are great when it comes to digital economy and exporting ICT technologies and knowledge, then I could say that actually, according to our statistics, we are already surpassing export of ICT of that of Estonia, at least by a couple of millions of, tens of millions of euros. So, as we have very friendly three Baltic nations, we are also sometimes making great jokes about each other. So, when it comes to history, when it comes to cultural ties, I'm actually very delighted to see that some of our professors have been working here in universities in India, and also that some of professors, and yesterday we had great opening of the book that has been written about the Baltic folklore and the resistance and the connectivity that actually we share with Mahatma Gandhi and his nonviolent resistance, and what we have done at the end of 80s and beginning of 90s of the last century when we were struggling to regain our independence. So this is another thing that I just wanted to mention. My final point, two points, very quick points: transportation and logistics and connectivity. Well, we do want to see the new routes that could be developed when it comes to railways, when it comes to air connectivity, and actually one of the reasons why we are increasingly coming to countries like India, to your neighbors, ministers of transportation, economy, and also we want to see more government officials, more companies coming to our region, is to find those new approaches. Well, you know that we have recently, and the crisis is still not fully over, experienced some turbulence in the Middle East. And of course it affects all of us in that or another way. But I also believe that we need to try to find ways how we can work on projects like Heart of Asia. And we have had very good relations with Central Asia, with Afghanistan, where India is also taking part in such kind of conferences and projects. And we need to find the ways and to encourage both businesses and also government officials to look at those. The final point, the new European Commission and also the new European Parliament has been very explicit on climate change and the way that we want to become the carbon neutral economy by 2050. My Prime Minister was one of those who have been actively supporting this switch in EU's policies, being one of 9 heads of state and government last May signing this appeal, and I'm happy to see that we are moving towards that goal. However, we see this not only as the beneficiary to the overall greening of our planet, but actually we see this also as the great opening for new business opportunities, new technologies to be invented, and also we want to see our startups, we want to see our companies to look for the new technologies and new ways, and I think that this is something what we could explore also in the future as the part of the implementation of Paris Climate Deal, as the part of the implementation of our EU's pledge to become carbon neutral economy by 2050, and to share our practices, our technologies, our let's say knowledge also with other countries that are interested, and if India is interested, that would be something that we would be very happy to look at. I would like to stop here. I just want to thank you really for this very, very warm welcome and very good atmosphere, and if there are any questions or any remarks, I would be more than happy to entertain them.
Mr. Minister, I think I can understand why Ambassador Artis has said that you are one of the most experienced and, as Dr. Ganguly says, European statesmen. You have covered so many things in such a short period of time. But in this room, we have colleagues and friends and young minds who I'm sure have got questions to ask you. So may I request you to kindly, Ambassador Wadhwa may like to start this talk. You know, Ambassador Wadhwa is a great friend of Latvia, as you know. And Anil, may I request you?
Thank you very much, Minister, for that bird's eye view of the relationship and what Latvia has been doing. It's been really beneficial for us at your opening remarks. I just had two small points because a lot has been covered. One is that, as you know, India is on the verge of choosing the future path towards, our connectivity issues and also the digital governance. And you rightly said that there is a controversy as far as 5G is concerned, political more than anything else. So in that context, Latvian companies, have they taken part in the trials? Wanted to ask you that. And the second issue is that given the scale that is required in India, how do Latvian companies want to go? How do they want to go in future? Because would it be in terms of collaboration with other European companies, or would there be a capability in Latvia to meet that scale? Because that's the biggest issue here in India. Secondly, in terms of the smart cities program that India has, Latvia has obviously done a lot in this field in terms of smart governance, and most of our cities which are there in the 100 list require that kind of governance in the future, especially the new ones which are coming up in the Delhi-Mumbai transport corridor, where new forms of governance obviously will have to be put in place. So in that context, again, Latvian expertise would be useful, and have your companies looked at that, how to go about that in the future.
Would you like to take two more?
As you direct me.
No, I think Minister, we could take a few more. And may I request you just to put the questions as succinctly as Ambassador Wadhwa put them so that we are very clear on what we are talking about. Yes, madam.
Hi, sir. You just mentioned about the startup culture that is developing in Latvia. I just wanted to know, is there a government intervention in incubating these startups, and what is the kind of success rate that we've seen in these startups being successful?
And Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, may I give you the floor?
Well, greetings, Minister. I have really enjoyed your perspectives and remarks. Just two quick questions. One on EU. You mentioned about the Brexit. What will be the impact on EU of Brexit? Will EU become stronger? Will it fragment? Also, what are the lessons that EU is drawing from Brexit? Because there are certain concerns that member states have. So how does the EU look at Brexit, and is there internal discussion on the road ahead? One. Two, you are a neighbor of Russia. It is believed that Russia has re-emerged as a strong political player. If you can reflect on your relations and the relations of the Baltic states with Russia, and a stronger Russia and assertive Russia, how do you view that re-emergence of Russia as an important player in the region?
Thank you. So, Minister, you have 5 questions.
Well, thank you very much. And all of them are very good. Thank you. First of all, on connectivity issues and issues that are related to, let's say, IT projects and particularly 5G. Well, look, as Ambassador just told me that if you want to ship a shipment from Mumbai to Latvia, it takes 23 days. I think it's quite a long time. Of course, it takes a lot of, let's say, technological and logistical and probably customs efforts, but we have an interest also to look on railways. We have the interest on looking at how we can develop probably more direct cooperation between, let's say, airports and to have more air shipments and so on. So from that point of view, I would say that one of definitely important things that we try to do, and we try to somehow encourage also our companies, is to be more visible here in India. And we try also to work out the very practical ways. For instance, we have had a very good and interesting testing cases with China. We were trying, at least twice there has been a test, I would say test train coming from China via the whole Eurasian continent and ending in Riga. It was an interesting endeavor because we were able to actually identify many technical issues, but not only technical issues. There are also many issues that you need to address when it comes to the customs, when it comes to the border procedures, because there are many countries that have a bit different ways. I believe if we do that also with India, we could end up with the same kind of interesting findings that could help all of us. On IT, on 5G, actually we have already pilot, how to say, pilot station working in Liepāja 5G that has been inaugurated, I think, already more than a year ago. Also in Riga we have 2 distinct companies working with this project. One is LNT that I've already referred, another is Telia too. And the funny thing is that it's currently more a kind of playground for technicians, for IT specialists. We as the regular users haven't actually figured out what 5G would mean today or tomorrow for us. But I think that we all understand the potential would be and will be great, and that there is an interest to develop that. So there is already very concrete pilot projects working, covering not one or two districts in a city, but more. And I think that this kind of ideas, those kind of projects could be very well looked if there is an interest also in this country, and those could be also worked out on smart programs, on smart cities, on smart governance. Well, you see, now as a citizen, it is very easy for me, for instance, to log in into the official government website latvia.lv and to do almost everything that I would need to do going to the office and requesting the meeting with official and the filing paperwork. All the taxes, all the declarations, well, you can still go physically and to ask for the assistance and questions to the official, but much more convenient thing is actually to file everything online, to sign petition to the government or to sign up for referendum online. It is possible simply to use your internet bank account and to not only execute commands when it comes to transfer of money, but also to do most of the government business with your internet banking ID. At the same time, we are also struggling on more complex challenges, and you know what happens with the new projects. First 2 or 3 months, everyone is pissed off with how the new, for instance, health system works. Everyone is criticizing government and Ministry of Health, and after 3 or 4 months, when the major challenges are fixed, everyone forgets how unsatisfied he or she was, and then we demand more and more and more, which of course demands more and more investment. So from that point of view, be it smart governance or be it, let's say, cities that are more and more operating on IT programs, that's a constant, actually, development challenge. You reach one level, you immediately want to reach more and more. And that's something that I think we could look at ways also how we can share experiences. On startups, yes, there indeed are specific government support programs, and also a couple of years ago, Parliament passed specific legislation. And also there are support programs for startups from the government. We have specific hubs. Well, one of the great achievements was, I still remember because I was amazed myself to see it on YouTube and on social media, one startup created drones that are able to help firefighters and also in the rescue services. And this has been quite an amazing let's say, example, what people, if they are allowed to think creatively and then they are supported a little bit, they can do. So if there is an interest, we can share our experiences also on specific legislative and also support programs. On the EU and Brexit, well, that could be another great roundtable, I believe, because I think that we are still in a kind of phase where we are trying to assess what it means. You see, 3.5 years ago, we hoped, frankly, we hoped that there can be some reverse. We saw how painful internally for the UK it was to reach an agreement. Elections in 2017, the last year, all those votes trying to ratify Brexit deal, and then another election in December 2019, but I think that everyone has now come to terms that UK is leaving, and we understand that probably this is also for the good of the country. They have to somehow come to some closure of this and to start the new page. For EU, the first immediate aftershock was actually in even the most skeptical EU member states. The support for EU membership actually went up. And then, of course, we have seen also that there are many parties that are, let's say, extreme right or extreme left that were gaining support in the national elections, and also to some extent you can look at the, not anymore new, but the European Parliament that was elected last year. So I think that as the EU we are still trying to find the best way forward. But my take is that because of the external challenges, migration pressures, both eastern and southern neighborhood with Ukraine, with Syria, with Libya, with all those issues that we all are facing, there are also new approaches. More on defense. Common European defense endeavors, if you compare, let's say, 2009 with 2019, it's a totally different thinking at the EU. If you look at our common understanding that we need more guarding external borders, it's again totally different to EU. But then you have also this debate, how much powers you want to transfer to Brussels. And you know, Latvia is also the member of Eurozone. I see some certain value and I see some contradiction of joint currency and then not enough, let's say, mechanisms that normally nation state has. You have the central bank, that's great. But for instance, our own experience have shown that if you have joint currency, if you have so much cooperation within the EU, then you also need to have more anti-money laundering mechanism at the EU level. Because one nation state, big or small, cannot actually address those issues. So I think that we will have this permanent internal discussion, more Europe versus more nation states. And I think this is built-in structural, let's say, contradiction. And so far, since 1950, since the idea of Europe, Poland, we actually came up, I think this is going to happen in a kind of cyclic way. There is going to be the kind of push for more Europe, another crisis like we had 2008, 2009 financial crisis, then trying to fix some issues. Next big debate, I believe, is going to be the common budget for next 7 years. Some pan-European taxes, be it digital tax, be it plastic tax, or be it financial tax. So we are going to have from time to time this kind of, you know, sway back and forth. But having said that, I'm still a believer in European projects because at the end of the day, big or small countries have seen also the value, especially in this crazy, crazy world that we are all surrounded. And on Russia, well, there has been a turning point in 2014. With what happened with Crimea and with Ukraine, I very much subscribe to what you have described, more assertive, more aggressive foreign policy. For my country, the 2020 marks also the 80th anniversary since Soviet Union marched in all three Baltic states occupied and we lost independence for 50 years. The narrative on history we are hearing from Russia recently about the beginning of World War II, about who did what and when and responsibility is very worrying. But we also see that NATO and also our strategic partner, the United States, and also the troops that NATO has stationed in the region, in the Baltic region, provides a very good insurance policy. So from that point of view...
Or provocation.
Sorry?
Or provocation.
No, it's not a provocation because, look, till 2014 there were no NATO troops whatsoever. But Russia had already military build-up in Kaliningrad. Iskander missiles were actually put there before 2014, and also exercises like Zapad 2009, 13 were conducted before any NATO soldier appeared for whatever mission. But after 2014, after what we saw, what is happening in Ukraine and in Crimea, I think that all NATO members understood this is not anymore about provocation, it's about defense. And that's how we view it. We have, by the way, political contacts with Russia. Our ministers of transportation and agriculture and economy travel to Russia, and we also have MFA contacts. But at the same time, we do believe that this is going to be rather challenging time ahead of us when it comes to many different places in the world, and we will have to tackle those countries that want to challenge status quo.
Thank you, Minister.
I can take 3 more questions from this side. I ask you, and then Madam, you're there, and Ambassador Goyal, you're third. Then we come to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm Praful. I'm a journalist. And
I have to be careful now.
He's the editor of one of our longest journals.
Organizer weekly. Sir, I have a specific question about the, you spoke about the students, you spoke about the growing relationship, even the talk about, having in an embassy there. But somehow we don't find that kind of media space or even mind space about for countries like Latvia and in India. So what can be done at, say, the communication or media level to have that kind of presence? The second question, which you actually discuss about European Union, but I'm looking at a larger question of, in the age of artificial intelligence, data and dataism, there will be larger questions of data sovereignty. And you have to be politically correct, but I will take names of China and US. So 2 giants are there. So how you are looking at the issue, and especially in the context of EU, how EU and India can work together to address the issue of data sovereignty and data security?
Thank you, sir. I'm Shweta. I'm a student of international studies from Jawaharlal University. My question is that, as we know that there is a rising crisis in the Persian Gulf, and last week Iran shot few missiles at the Al-Assad air base in Iraq, and as per my knowledge, there are Latvian soldiers also there, and the government is thinking of withdrawing the soldiers and shifting them to Kuwait. So what is your reflection on that? What is the current situation, and how Latvian government in particular is going to react to the Persian Gulf crisis? That's my question. Thanks.
Excellency, thank you very much. Such a very detailed and very comprehensive presentation. If you permit me, can I draw you out a bit on the geopolitics of Arctic, which you have not mentioned so far. Now, we know that China has been focusing on the routes through the north, Trans-Siberian routes towards the Arctic and on to the north. There have been reports to that. You mentioned about the train, and those connectivity routes are not purely transportation. There are investments on infrastructural development along that. At the same time, Arctic seems to be becoming a contest area for the mineral exploitation, and the main players are the USA, Russia Federation, China, and there will be others I'm not aware of. Could you please throw some more lights on what is happening in the Arctic? Whether it is going to really further develop or create a crisis, create some further concerns, and Chinese investments in, let us say, in your country, Latvia.
Much shorter answers. So maybe.
I have a different kind of a question to Your Excellency. And the question is, while global warming is a global concern, all right, terrorism is a regional conflict in various countries and various sizes, but there is a different kind of a conflict that is threatening the global security that is coming, and perhaps more it is affecting the European Union countries, including UK. The Islamist fundamentalism is creeping in, and they have become more and more violent. They have started becoming in various regions. Perhaps I think this should be considered as a global threat to the very humanity. And UN should, without taking any sides on regional or religion basis, there is a different kind of address to be given to this for overall global concern. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Minister. I'm Smita Mishra. I serve as an advisor to the Prasar Bharati, which is the public broadcasting platform of India. My question flows from what Prafulji just asked you about cultural exchanges and capturing more mind space for countries like Latvia. My question is specifically on Indian cinema, and I do not know if you may have watched any of our Hindi or any other language films, but we would be very pleased if you do. And cinema has for decades been one of our primary industries, and like every other industry, cinema keeps exploring new lands and skies, you know, for their location, for stories, for backdrop, for inspiration. So is venturing and partnering with Bollywood, with other Indian language cinema, anywhere in your agenda of investments or cooperation? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Let me start with the last one. You know, once when I was walking down the old Riga, I saw that there was a movie being actually filmed. And only then I read that actually it's Indian movie that is being filmed in Riga. And what was the name? Agent Vinod. So, and by the way, I am familiar with Indian cinema because, especially during my childhood, Indian movies were popular, especially, you know, Bollywood. So they are still there, and I very much think, and by the way, when I was here in 2012, I had with me as part of business delegation also our companies that were doing the support for cinema. They were looking for partners. So this is, by the way, covered, maybe could be covered more, but then at the end of the day probably comes to the question you asked about the overall understanding and learning. And here I can actually answer very easy. The more Indian journalists would come to Latvia and write about Latvia and about the northeast of Europe, the more people would learn, and vice versa. So from that point of view, we always are encouraging and happy to see more and more foreign journalists coming, and that includes also India, learning about our country and then writing and suggesting. And that's the only way how we can actually, let's say, encourage more people to learn and more information. So that would be the first and the fifth question. Now on Arctic. Thank you very much for asking this question. You see, I was delighted that we were on the same panel in Umeå at the beginning of October with the Indian Minister of State for External Affairs. And that was great that actually he was there because it showed that there is an interest in Arctic as more global issue, that it's not only regional. And at introductory remarks you said that I was there and I was saying that we are not let's say, Arctic nation, but actually we are bordering at least with one Arctic nation, which is Russian Federation. And actually we feel effects of warming of Arctic as we speak. We used to have winters that were right now in January it would be -15, -20 and white and snowy and grey. Now it's +5, +6. This the last year has been the warmest year on the recorded history. So we already feel this kind of climate change, warm up, and part of it because the ice in Arctic is melting. That's one challenge that we see as we speak. Probably great that we don't have so harsh winters, but frankly I would prefer to have -15 right now rather than to go to the rainy, windy and grey Baltic region. Second, absolutely agree, Arctic is becoming for another battleground for great powers. And if you speak with my Nordic friends who are directly influenced, they don't want to see Arctic to become another, let's say, competitive ground for great powers, for militarization. Unfortunately, it is happening. We don't have any international regime, and that's where we do agree, and we very much call for those, and we support those countries that are saying that let's not have military bases, let's not have flags or whatever military installations you can find. Unfortunately, that is where maybe there are countries that try still to assert their primacy, let's say. On the other hand, the good thing is that the Arctic Council is the only council where we still see that the United States, Russia, Canada, the Nordic countries are sitting together and trying to discuss issues. That's a good part of the story, but the risk of militarization is quite big, and that's where we don't want to see any escalation. Be it, let's say, those three of top great countries you actually mentioned yourself. And then we had the question about the Gulf tension. Well, that's true. We have decided for tactical withdrawal of our instructors from Iraq, but we are not leaving this anti-ISIS operation because we are part of Danish contingent, and as soon as, because of the tension, there was a decision to withdraw instructors for the time being because they were not anymore training Iraqi security forces, we agreed on withdrawal. However, as soon as the situation is going to calm down, we still believe that fight against ISIS, and I was also participating at the EU Foreign Affairs Council last Friday, where we all agreed that we should not let this tension also to spill over to the fact that then nobody again is fighting terrorists, Islamic terrorists, ISIS, Daesh, whatever we call them, or any other new group that may emerge, that we should actually still insist on continuation of those operations, and our soldiers will return as soon as possible, as soon as the coalition leadership is deciding to do that. But on the other hand, I could say that the situation in the Gulf is probably now better than it used to be 10 days ago. The tensions are a little bit calming down, but I think that we are not out of the woods. I could only say that we would be happy to see that Iran abides by a nuclear deal, but we know that the United States left. You know that European position is very strong. We want to see this deal to succeed, but if we see that it is impossible, then, and if this deal is broken, then probably we need to have extra diplomatic efforts to start new negotiations, maybe to include not only nuclear deal issues, but also issues that are related to the Iran's influence in the neighboring countries, and also ballistic missiles program. But I still believe that diplomacy must be the first instrument, and all other things should be looked in a bit different way. However, having said that, we still believe also that US strike on the 3rd of January was the strike conducted also partly because of the self-defense. That's something that we also acknowledge, taking into account all the complexity in the region. But having said that, we have always called for the escalation and diplomacy as the primary tool. And then Islamist fundamentalism and fight against terrorism. Well, look, I think that we have now all kinds of terror activity. We have sometimes domestic right-wing terrorism in some countries, some Islamic terrorism, some extremism, and I do think that, and we have already openly, we were speaking about that, we need to address those issues not from the politically correct point of view. We need to address them from the efficiency. If people are blowing up other people or shooting them or killing them in name of whatever, be it the religion or be it social beliefs or economic beliefs, then we must fight them. But then I think that the public would appreciate if we are direct and we are telling who did what. Sometimes these politically correct issues that we are not naming that or another group actually plays against us, and that is probably something that people in many countries are fed up, and that's why they are not anymore voting for, let's say, centric forces, but they are kind of moving to the right or to the left or to the new parties, and that is something that all politicians, especially in Europe, should learn. I must thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think you now, if you allow me, on behalf of the Shama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation, to give you a warm vote of thanks, Minister. You have really performed such a virtuous performance. I think I have been swept off my feet. And I can only say that participants in the Raisina dialogue are going to be in for a very, very interesting session when they listen to you. And may I invite you and your delegation to join us for some tea? If you have time.
Thank you so much.